Hello, everyone, and welcome back to today's Monday Science lesson. I hope you had a great week making observations with the animal cameras we talked about last week. I saw some elephants, water buffalo, and some really cute baby eagle chicks. Let's take a look at today's schedule. During today's lesson 2, we'll look a little deeper into what causes animals to do the behaviors we are observing. And next week, we'll look at the data that we've collected to try and figure out what it can tell us and what it all means. During today's lesson, we will be using the Lesson 2 worksheet that's linked in the description of this video. Before we go too far into today's lesson, let's take a look at what animal behaviors we've observed so far. I'd like you to tell me what types of animals and animal behaviors you have observed. Take a moment and leave a comment about which animal you've seen the most and what's the most common animal behavior you've seen. You can pause and then restart this video once you've left a comment. That's great. I can't wait to look through all the comments you've left and see what you've been seeing. My next question for you is, what do you think affects the behaviors we observed? I'd like you to take a moment and brainstorm the types of things that you think might affect the animal behaviors we've observed. On a scrap piece of paper, list out the types of things that might affect the animal behaviors you observed. You can pause this video and restart once you're done. So here's the list of things that I came up with that might affect animal behavior. Your list might have more things or different things, which is great. The first thing was the time of day. Some animals are more active at night, others during the day, and others are around sunrise and sunset. Another thing that could affect animal behavior that I thought of was other animals. Let's say you're a fish and there is an osprey that eats fish around. That might affect what you're going to be doing. The seasons could also affect animal behavior. Some animals do different things in the fall, winter, spring, or summer compared to other seasons. The last thing I could think of was weather. How might the temperature, or whether it's sunny or rainy, affect what animals are doing? Now, I'd like you to choose one of the things you just came up with that might affect animal behavior and explore it a little bit further. To do this, we're going to use something called a claim, evidence, and reasoning. Some of you may have used this in school already before, but I'll explain it here. The first step is to make a claim about how one of the factors that you listed above might affect animal behavior. This should be about 2 sentences long. Think of it as a statement or prediction. Next, I want you to describe the evidence that you have or would need to support this claim. This could be an animal fact or something you already know about the animal, as well as something you could observe by watching the animal. This should also be about 2 to 3 sentences. The last part of the claim, evidence, reasoning is the reasoning. This is basically an explanation of how or why the evidence you listed in step 2 supports the claim you made in step 1. This section tends to be a little bit longer and can be 2 to 4 sentences. Be sure to include some reasons as to why you think the evidence that you gave supports the claim you made at the beginning. You can pause this video while you work and restart it once you've done. For this week's data collection, we're going to continue our behavior observation experiments, but adjust the type of data we're collecting a little bit so we can test the claim that you just made about animal behavior. You can find an updated data collection spreadsheet linked in the description of this video. So how can we study the effect of things like time, weather, or other animals on animal behavior? First of all, to study time, all we have to do is make behavior observations at different times. It's especially interesting to see what's happening around sunrise or sunset because some special types of animals are active around there. Remember, because we're watching animal cameras from around the world, sunrise and sunset might happen at different times than from where you are. For example, sunset at many of the African wildlife cameras that we've been talking about happens at 5:45 p.m. But that is the same thing as 8:45 in the morning where I live in California. Isn't that neat? During breakfast, I can watch sunsets over African waterholes and see what types of animals are doing things there. The next thing that we can look at is temperature or weather. This one's also pretty simple, and we can just write down the weather where the forecast is. This could be as simple as writing down that things are sunny or cloudy. To get more information, we could look up a weather forecast for the area that the camera is in and write down things like the temperature. We could also go even further and look for the weather forecast for that area for the coming week and try to plan our observations for days when it's maybe sunny or rainy to give some variety to our observations. The last option is looking at how the presence of other animals might affect the behavior of the animal you are watching. This can be a little tricky to spot at times because animals don't regularly interact with one another, and it might take some patience, but it can be really neat when it happens. When you're doing this, be sure to record the type of animal you are watching and the type of animal whose behavior is affecting it, as well as the behaviors we're watching. Remember that this can go both ways. For example, the presence of a lion might affect what a gazelle does, but also seeing a gazelle around would certainly affect the type of behavior that the lion does. If you can come up with a different way to test one of the factors of things that affect animal behavior, you're welcome to collect data on that during your data sheet. Your job is to combine the observational skills you practiced last week with these new techniques and make observations so we can test the claim that you made today. You can use the updated data sheet in your worksheet and be sure to follow these general methods. Make sure you always write down the location of your camera, record the time where the camera is, not where you are. You can look up the weather data or temperature and make observations about other types of animals. Be sure that every time you watch an animal camera, you do so for 5 minutes and that you make tally marks for all the animal behaviors you see. Let's take a look at the new data sheet here. As you can see, next to the location field, you have spots for time, weather, temperature, and the type of affecting animal. If you are looking at a different factor that affects animal behavior, you can make your own column in here. The rest of the data sheet is the same. Make sure you always write down the type of animal that you're watching and put a tally mark each time the animal does that behavior. Your homework for the next lesson is to collect data using the methods that we just talked about and try to collect your data in a way that will test the claim you made. Next week, we're going to look at the data you are going to collect and compare it to your claim to see what it can show us about animal behaviors. The other part of your homework is to enter your data into a computer spreadsheet like Google Sheets or Excel. You can add up the tally marks in each square and enter that as a number instead. Remember, only ever put numbers or letters in a single spreadsheet cell. So that's all for today's lesson. Good luck collecting data to test the claim that you came up with today, and we'll see you back here next week to take a look at the data you've collected and figure out whether or not it tests your claim. Until next time.